Hey Zach, how are you?
Tiffany, doing good. How are you?
Good. I'm really excited to do this with you. I came up with this idea of just showcasing an artist that we both like, or one of us likes, and sharing with the other and talking about what we like in terms of composition, value structure, color, and all that great stuff. And I personally think this is a great way to expose people to different kinds of artists, from around the world. And yeah, we'll see where this goes. This first artist we chose today, his name is, hopefully I pronounce it right, Arkhip Kuindzhi. He's Ukrainian, actually of Greek descent. And yeah, I personally, a little backstory about how I came across him is that when I was working on the Jesus film, Jamie Jones told me about him and he showed me a painting that he had referenced for one of his concept art pieces. And I was like, oh my gosh, this guy is amazing. And I immediately fell in love with his work. So I thought today it would be really cool to showcase one of his works because probably I'm guessing not a lot of people know about him. So yeah, do you want to get started?
Yeah. You're gonna share your
Yeah,
screen so you can see? Cool.
yeah. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Um, I have this painting pulled up. It's called On Valaam Island. Hold on, I texted the name to you. Now I think I pronounced it wrong. So let me pull it up again. I was trying to find the name of the painting this morning. On
No,
Valaam Island, I think. I might have pronounced it wrong. But yeah, this painting, I think I'll start off with saying that I think one of the things that if you guys haven't heard of Arkhip Kuindzhi, oh my gosh, I'm totally butchering his name, is one of the things that I really, and this painting as well, that really stood out to me was his bold value structure, along with really intentional compositions. So I thought how we do this, Zach, is, talk about composition and then value structure and color and kind of work that way up. And yeah, I just wanted to be a really fun, casual conversation.
yeah.
Um, I wanted to throw out a fun fact, as apparently I was reading about him on Wikipedia, and he studied a bit under Ivan Ivanovsky, who's a painter that's really famous for the beautiful wave painting. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Hmm.
And yeah, anywho, this
It just made me think this is what art history class should have been like in
I
college.
know, right? Did you ever
Mm.
take art history?
Yeah, we had to, and we just were like
Really?
memorizing dates and all this pointless stuff. But like actually sitting down and like analyzing like
Right.
awesome artwork would have been so much better.
See, I never even took an art history class, so I'm almost kind of doing it myself now, like asking people, but I wish I had an art
Yeah.
history class that I took, but you're right. It's this fun dialogue that is often missed, I think, which is why I'm so excited to do it with you.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I guess we could start out talking about this piece in terms of composition. I'll make it a little bit bigger and maybe move all the crap that I have on the side that I didn't. Um, One of the first things that I see is that the composition is really simple but powerful. It's not necessarily a lot of things going on. It leads your eye in though. And every time I look at a painting, it's always this journey that I feel like, oh, like, is the painting inviting the viewer in? And I really feel like, with the design of this river right here, the beautiful positive and negative shapes, however, I actually never liked that term. I don't know about you. I like every shape is important to me. So I never understood that. But I'm going to say like the shapes of the land and the darker shapes of the river, this beautiful simplistic shape of the background trees. The shape language is simple but powerful. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I like the S or like the zigzag taking us from
Yeah,
foreground to background. Like that's such a like a good way to describe the perspective, going back into space and
right,
creating the depth in the piece.
right, right. And I think that's something that we can really feel because of the composition. not only the value structure, but because of the composition, you can really feel that depth. And I think that's a really cool point. I'm trying not to talk about value yet because there's so many things about value that I know that brings this piece, to life. But I'm trying to focus just on composition because there's so much about value that I would love to talk about. The other really cool thing is I feel like how how you can actually see, and I actually brought grids on top, so I'll just go ahead and overlay this on. This is actually grids that I use for myself and also when I analyze other paintings, and also I teach this in my mentorships. But you can
Can
see
I
here the
ask a
pink.
question
Yeah,
about
of
the
course.
grids? Because I don't work this way, and I don't really um know where you're going with this, but I'm curious, do you do this with your own work to kind of like plot out where focal areas are and like how to draw your eye?
I do, yeah, I do use this. I used to not, but something that I've realized that is really powerful, and I'll just pull them up separate right here, is that, and I learned this from my friend and mentor, call him a mentor, he's my friend Corey. But the term grid sounds very restrictive, but I actually learned and realized that it's actually the opposite, and by understanding how things are designed, you at least know where, for example, the center of your piece is, or you know where the left thirds and right thirds, and that gives you even more power and knowledge to design around that or break the rules, right, intentionally, and everything goes back to that intentionality. So for me, I started using this in my own work. A lot of times what I find is that because I've I don't know, studied paintings a lot, it actually comes intuitively, and sometimes I'll put the grids on afterwards, I'll be like, "Oh, it kind of does line up to certain things. I didn't really plan it that way," but because you build up that intuition of, how to place things in, a pleasing way, arrange things in relationships, I find that the grids reinforce that, and it doesn't restrict me, it helps me design even better. So yeah, everyone knows about the rule of thirds, which is here. Ooh, and I'll tell you a really cool thing, Zach. So if you draw the center line grid first, which is really, and you don't need any rulers or math. So it's like, if you think you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know math, you don't need any math at all. You just connect the corners, and then from there you draw the vertical and the horizontal and they intersect in the center. So now you know where the center is. And then if you draw a triangle, upside down kind of triangle here, and then another triangle there, you just connect the dots, and that's your center line grid. So you basically use the boundaries of your canvas to figure out the center and figure out other diagonals that if you want to put something straight in the half of diagonal or below the diagonal or above the diagonal. So they're kind of nice plotting points for you. And then here, if you just intersect these, that's the rule of thirds. So literally no measuring whatsoever. It's just, connect the dots. And then as we know, these offer alternative. Sorry, I don't mean to be like lecturing you or anything. Just to show you. I don't want to
No,
come off as like, oh, I'm teaching. But
no, it's
I
good
just,
because I don't yeah, this is all new to me pretty much.
oh,
So
no, I was just trying to, yeah, make the point like you don't need any measuring. So, like
yeah.
once you have that, you just connect, these four corners, and now you have four other points that you can maybe place your focal point if you want to, other than the center. And people say never to put things in the center, but I don't know if you know who Emil Carlson is. He's another painter that I really like, and he places things in the center. And other people deliberately or intentionally place things in the center. And I'm not. For me, it's not. Those rules are meant to be broken. And then the diamond grid. This one is basically just um, that this is you want to place things that are important kind of within the diamond. So anything outside, I guess you can say that they're supporting actors because our eye tends to, not go as much to the outside. We tend to focus more in the boundaries here. And of course, that's not always the case, but it's a nice guide. So those are the three grids, which you're right. I should have backtracked and um and explained that. Was that Yeah, I hope that made sense.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah.
I'm
I
gonna
think
put
it's about not necessarily always putting something in the third, but
exactly.
knowing where it is so then you can
Exactly.
make a choice from there.
Exactly. Knowing where it is so important. sometimes what I like to do is I'll just put the grids on separately to find points, kind of like really interesting intersections one by one. Like I can see that this tree line right here kind of falls along the diagonal right there. This tree stump is kind of placed in between. So I'll use the quadrants to place certain things in between. And it's really helpful for me personally, to create non-repeating shapes. So sometimes I'll use these boundaries to create really interesting S curves that usually for me, I don't know about you, but I tend to create um like really equal things when I'm not thinking. And so sometimes I'll use these points of, what do you call it? Like navigational points to sort of be like, oh, let me see if I can create something more interesting that way. So that's how I use grids, and I don't use them super religiously. Odd Nearjum uses them. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's like a crazy figurative painter. He uses them, and Edgar Payne used them as well. So I found that really interesting. Uh,
I just noticed that the horizon is right in the middle, which
right in the middle. Yeah.
usually try not to do. Um,
Yeah, yeah, and that's really cool, but what I think is cool that offsets it is that you don't like, I didn't sense that, but I think it's because he has this shape that comes up to this, and I'll just draw a little bit on top, but, like, this comes up right there, hits that, and then this kind of offsets that, so you don't feel that middle horizon. And also, I think another really cool thing is that this comes up slightly above and then goes down. So there's all these variations above and below that center line that create those subtle but important variations, which I find really fascinating. Like I could totally nerd nerd out about all this stuff.
yeah, that's a
Because
good
I
point. Because if it was just like a straight line across,
right,
then that'd be really boring. But since there are
right.
shapes coming in and out, it's makes it more interesting.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I think there's like so many cool shapes coming in and out. I also think it's cool how he intentionally made this go off the canvas, which I necessarily like if I did it, I wouldn't think to do that. But I think that's something interesting, almost kind of like leading your eye back in a little bit. Um, and how, the S curve, for example, hits here, then it hits here. And so it's like he's using kind of these points right here to create really varied curves, um, that I know for me personally, I don't know about you, Zach, but, like, I would've been like that, and that's really easy to do that for me, so I have to
Mhm.
constantly actively think like, "Oh, how can I vary certain things?" Yeah, I think that's a really cool thing to see, and I'll show you when we put on the rule of thirds, I'll just slap it on here, and I'm just gonna snap it to the grid. You can manually draw this, but I'm just going to snap it on with the snap feature so that you can see now we have the rule of thirds and kind of like new revelations that I feel go on. Like the top part of this back canopy of trees is roughly along the rule of thirds. It doesn't have to be exact and never has to be exact, but it's roughly along that. Um, and how this tree comes from it almost extends from that bottom rule of third, and also how the trees are roughly aligned at that left rule of thirds, which I think is kind of cool. So I don't know. Do you see anything?
Um, yeah, I was gonna say those two trees standing up, like that's very obvious.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I think you covered it.
Yeah. Actually, I'm going to put a tangent. A really cool thing about Edgar Payne's paintings is if you put the grids on them, you can really see how he organizes. I don't know if he did it intentionally. He just, because I know he used like a normal square grid, but he places people in quadrants. And to me, that's how he interestingly places like groups of peoples on horses in interesting groupings. And you always find them in quadrants. It's really cool. Especially like his paintings where there's, the rocks, and tiny people on the bottom. Yeah, he does the rule of six a lot, which I noticed in a lot of his paintings. I just thought that was something cool
Hmm.
to throw out.
We should
Um,
do an Edgar Payne one, and
we
then
should
you can talk
definitely.
more about that
Yeah,
because
that would be fun. And everyone knows him, so it's a fun one, right? We're starting with a rather obscure. We should definitely do an Edgar Payne one. But yeah, I think, how this offsets right there. And even like how these grooves are hitting. I just love the detail that is that even the crevices, like sometimes I'm like, how did they think of designing where the crevices would go? And sometimes you can find these subtle patterns that lead your eye in. Like even these shapes right here, I love noticing these shapes, all those light on dark shapes and dark on light shapes, which is, awesome. And then the last, just for funsies, I'll just put on, let's just draw it because why not? I'm just going to use a line tool. Let's do green. Oh, that might be really light. That's okay. You can still see it, right?
Yep.
And to connect the midpoints. And that's just to sort of be like, oh, okay, like what's within the boundary that is important. I feel like the main elements are kind of within this area. But grids are no grids. I mean, you can turn off the grids and I'll turn off all that stuff and you can see how intentional the to me the design is. I mean, even like the back trees right here offer this kind of, foreground or midground, background, and even these little trees in the back just to elicit, just a little bit of variety and value just to bring out some trees. I just absolutely love that.
Yeah, actually, that's a
Um,
good point. Having repeating shapes that like go
yeah.
back into space really helps with the depth.
Yeah, exactly. Like this. And I love how everything's straight actually, but in terms of composition and intention, I think something that's really cool is that like these are really almost militarily straight and then you have this slight playfulness in there and that kind of offsets everything slightly. And I was telling you off camera earlier or off recording that to me it almost felt like a figurative like painting in a landscape form. It's almost like two people dancing. At least that's what it says to me. I don't know if that was his intention, but I think part of art that's really cool is that, two people can look at it and they can totally extract something different from it. And so to me, it's like what your eye just goes straight to these two trees and they look kind of different from everything else. Fallen tree right here. And also design wise, how they're two different trees or maybe just one hasn't shed its bark yet. I don't know. I'm not sure what kind of trees these are.
Yeah, it
But
looks like two different trees, like a
two
more of a
different
pine
trees.
tree and then
Right.
an aspen or
Yeah, 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 yeah. And I think that, I mean, that has to be intentional, don't you think? I mean, like, why would someone think, like, let me just paint two different trees next to each other? Because why not? Like, I don't know. That wouldn't cross my mind at all. So I think that is just really cool. And I would love to know the narrative behind this. I haven't found anything about it, but um I just think the texture wise, value wise, color wise, everything kind of um, peaks right here, and everything supports that, which is really cool. So, yeah. Anything else that you wanted to add?
um well, I think if you want to talk about value structure
Yeah, we can
next,
do that. Yeah,
because
let's
it's
do
kind
that.
of a unique value.
It is. What do
Like
you see
things
about it that stands out to you?
um there's like a gradient, like dark, and then there's like a nice gradient coming to light in the foreground, which is pretty unique to see.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's like the big statement. Um,
For
yeah,
sure.
and then there's all these bits of dark that kind of like lead your eye through the piece.
Oh, I love that.
Kind of,
Yeah, these kind of dark accents. That's a really good point.
mhm. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that's what I
yeah.
see with value.
Yeah. And I think even it's cool to look at this as a thumbnail and how well it reads from a thumbnail. I think one of the reasons why I chose this piece was because when I first saw this piece, like when you're browsing on a website or something of art pieces, you're like, wow, that hits you as a thumbnail and you just got to click on it and look at bigger. Yeah, this was one of those pieces. And so you're so right. Like I feel like this valley structure is not something you typically see, especially I feel like in animation, we're used to working from like darker foreground, then lighter midground, and then atmospheric background, but this is literally the complete opposite, which I think is so bold and so, like you said, unique. And it just makes such a striking statement. And that beautiful gradation. Also talk about, I mean, we're not there yet, but talk about like the application. It feels so thin there. I think that's kind of cool, but we'll talk about that after. Um, but you know, this beautiful gradation, like you said, from darks to light, and then dark, and then just, you know, it's almost like, you know, these trees are emerging from the background. And I don't know if you look at paintings this way, but I love to, at its core, I love to see the simplicity of paintings of like light on dark and dark on light, which is different from light and shadow sometimes. And to me, this is that really simple statement of the trees being a lighter statement on a darker background. Yes, the background's in shadow, but I think that's what creates this really stark statement, not stark, sorry, striking statement. And so I think keeping this tree and these trees at overall lighter value, that was really nice as well. And you mentioned those dark accents, right? Where do you see those coming in?
Um, like those small shadow shapes in the rocks. The like the
Yeah,
really like paper thin ones that kind of
right
like go
there,
through. Yeah, those and then also like the little cracks. Um, those help to like lead your eye through the
for
piece and
sure.
they yeah, it's just like a nice shadow shape. And then along where the rocks meet the water, you see the tiny little like contact shadow.
Right there, like right there, and this stuff right there. Is that what you're
Yep.
talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, all those little things. I know I love zooming into a painting and just looking and appreciating these little details. For sure. I think all these things. Sometimes what's a fun thing in the power of Photoshop is to literally paint over it and see how it looked like without it, right? So if we painted over it and we're like, what would it look like without all this stuff? Like certainly it's not like someone held him to gunpoint was like, you need to put this stuff. You know, he decided to put it for a reason. I was like, what if we took out all this stuff? How would that impact the composition or the way that we draw our eye in? And sometimes I like to turn it on and off, and it's kind of like, wow, you know, like that does break up that space a little bit more and adds a little bit of that textural integrity that I think is really important. So yeah, you're right. Like those shapes are really crisp and really beautiful.
Mhm.
And
I like it both ways. Like when you put
mhm,
your paint over on,
yeah,
it it draws the attention even more to the trees, I feel like,
yeah, yeah,
which
that's
is
true
cool.
in
So
a
you
way.
could go either way, I feel
You
like.
could go either way. Yeah, that's true. I do think with this though, it just like leads your eye just a little bit more.
Mhm.
But you could definitely go both ways as well. And I think another thing I just noticed was look at how dark that area of the river is. It's like the darkest area. And then again in the back, and it's right by the trees. Like, do you think that contrast right there helps to bring your eye into that area of the painting?
Yeah, the darkest dark right there in the
Yeah,
water,
like
it's like a big arrow that just points you right to
right
the
there.
trees and the
Yeah.
focal point. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I was just zooming out and seeing that. I didn't really notice it more close, but when I zoomed, I was like, oh, wow. And everything comes together. I mean, he could have done this. I mean, there's so many ways. That's the thing about painting that's crazy. There's so many ways you could do this, and none of them is wrong. It's just like, you know, what that looks like sludge now. But um, but you know, I'm it's so curious. Like I always would love to ask the artist, like, what made you choose that? Or um, you know, why did you make this decision or that decision? And
Mhm.
another really cool thing is kind of in line with value and temperature. And I know you know this because you do it, you talked about it and you do it all the time in your paintings. But that sky is the same value almost as this tree, but they're just different temperatures, would you say?
Hmm. Turn it to black and white again. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah, and that's something that I love to find in paintings, and you do it all the time. And I love to try to push that in my own work as well. So when I study these paintings, those are kind of the sensibilities that I like to take. It's like, wow, how did they keep the value structure simple, but then just shift slightly in temperature? So your eye goes, that's a separate element, that's a different element. But
Mhm.
I don't go there because the value is the same, but the temperature is just slightly tweaked. It's almost like this brain. Do you wanna see a painting by Edgar Payne that does that? Okay,
Yeah,
we're
or
gonna go on
should
a quick tangent. Scott
okay, okay.
Christensen showed me this, and after that, I couldn't. I was like, I had to show all my students. So let me just go on a quick tangent really quick to show you what I mean. Inspirational resource. Let me just pull it up. I have to find it a little bit.
Um,
Edgar Payne. Um,
this is actually something I've been trying to do or be more conscious of in my paintings lately, because
yeah,
I always think about, you know, solving the problems in value, but you
right.
can also solve the problems in color,
Exactly.
hue or temperature using different colors to separate objects. So cool.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. I'm so glad that you brought that up. I feel like that's next level stuff. It's like
Yeah.
everyone, I was saying like they want, it's like, oh, highest contrast in value, but it also could be contrast and saturation, while maintaining the same value. I mean, there's so many ways you can trick the eye into being like, you think that's contrast and value, but it's not. It's just in temperature or saturation. So I'm
Mhm.
so glad that you brought that up. But this painting right here, you can't barely see it because the thing is there's snow, and I think he cleverly puts the snow to separate it. But I don't know if you can tell that this rock is the same value as the sky.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if you squint, you can see it, right?
Hmm.
It's basically almost minus the light accents and the dark shadow accents, but like right there and there, that's the same value right there. And
Yeah.
they're warm and cool, and so um I think he smartly does that because, he uses the snow as an accent, or maybe he didn't know he did it. I don't know. But I thought that was really cool. And I think the thing that ties it together is that undertone painting that he has, that
Hmm.
warm. And then I'm guessing that he put, the sky color on top. And then he put these cooler grays maybe on top of that warm undertone, these warmer pinkish grays. But yeah, when I saw this, I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy because if I were to do a set, like, see how that's right there? That's the same value as minus this little dark accents. You see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Um, I just want to show that really quick. Tangent. We got to do Edgar Payne another time. So
Yeah.
we'll save him. We can do a
Yeah.
couple of Edgar Payne paintings because everyone loves him. But essentially, I just wanted to bring up that he's kind of doing the same here, value wise. And therefore it just creates this beautiful grouping in the back. Like your eye just kind of like, it's land, it's sky, it's trees, it's water, but you don't pick up on it as much because the value grouping is so subtle.
Hmm.
And then in terms of temperature, I just love how warm he pops some of the background trees, which works because I don't know about you, but I think it's really hard to pop warms in the background sometimes. It can come forward too much. And it's
Hmm.
that fine line between value and saturation. If it's too saturated, it won't work. But because this is more earthy, I think it works. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think the cool sky right next to it, um, that helps it, everything kind of sit together.
Yeah.
What's interesting is the sky is cool, that row of trees is warm, and then the ground right in front of it, the plane that's facing the sky is then cool again. So it kind of
Yeah.
makes a makes a pattern
Yeah, that's
of warm
true.
and cool.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's cool, warm, and then cool again. And I know you love grays. I love grays. And this whole painting is basically composed of grays, would you say? And
Hmm.
yet it still feels, I mean, I don't know. To me, it feels colorful. In a sense, not, not like circus colors, but the pops of saturation are in really nice places. Like, do you see the teal right there? These little bits of teal. I guess we're venturing into color now as well as temperature, but they're all related. But these little
Yeah.
bits of teal, these colors right here, like this beautiful green. Um, and if I color pick, like relatively saturated, and then everything around relatively saturated in relationship to the colors around it, because then everything else around it is, venturing in the grays area right here. But I just love that. I think those little gems of color just make such a big difference, and it's like ding, I don't know. the word
Yeah.
to like the lemon squeeze, the acid that brings out, I don't know, food analogies, whatever works for you. The staccato, I don't know, whatever analogy works for you for y'all listening out there. But yeah, I love those warm and cool grays in the sky. Um, and how that ground plane right there, just beautiful, cooled and hints of warm. And, we could color pick this and have fun to see where they lie. Even these cooler rock forms right here, kind of greenish gray. Um, and then these pops of warmth right here, in the foreground. I think that's really nice as well,
Yeah.
in different places. Yeah. Yeah. I think,
Um, it's like in animation, they always a lot of times they tell you to like, oh, make it more saturated or make it more colorful, or
right.
they take your color key and then they just like crank the saturation when they put it in the
Right.
movie theater or whatever. But what they're missing and what like this piece does so well is having a lot of gray, but then um being specific about where they're using
Yeah.
the like the saturation and like
Hmm.
so we're drawing our eye around the piece with these bits of color. Yeah.
Yes, I love that. Drawing the eye around with these bits of color. Yeah. And because this piece is, so largely composed of beautiful grays, those those little gems of color just stand out so much more. It's like that bing. I don't know what else
Yeah.
to say,
You
but it
can
sounds
appreciate
you can appreciate it.
those
Yeah.
colors.
Exactly. Exactly. It's like this can't who was it? It was I just read this and I shared it. It was Andrew Loomis has said something. Okay, so no, it wasn't Andrew Loomis. It was the famous Golden Age illustrator.
I'm
Oh
horrible
my
with names,
gosh.
so don't ask
Oh
me.
my gosh. I was just reading about him not too long ago. Okay. It was not Leyendecker. Someone else. Cornwell, Dean Cornwell. And he
Uh,
said that he, he said that understanding your grays is like a cook who makes a steak but also knows how to make the sauce because apparently, I don't know this, in steak cooking, the sauce is just as important as the steak. And so it's like you really got to know how they marry together. And I thought I'm kind of butchering it, but when he said it made a lot of sense. And also I like cooking, so I was like, oh, cooking analogy makes sense to me. So so I thought it was cool to hear him say that. Andrew Loomis has talked a lot about grays as well. Um, and how and also Charles Hawthorne in his book, I think it's called On Color, but he has a beautiful quote about grays, which is like, you know, when you take the colors on your canvas, on your palette, they may look like nothing, but when you put it in a painting, they completely can transform the painting because, everything exists in relationships. And so I feel like, you know, this really speaks to that. And just all those beautiful nuances. And I think why I really want to do these talks is because I feel like a lot of times it's easy to look at a painting and be like, oh, that's pretty. Next, especially with like scrolling nowadays and not. But it's like, no, let's take the time to slow down and really have a dialogue about why we appreciate this painting or what's so good about this so that, you can take those sensibilities into, not you, but like everyone listening can take and you can take their sensibilities into our own paintings and learn from that, So I think this is why I really wanted to try this.
could
Um,
you um duplicate this painting? I want to have you try something in Photoshop.
yeah. Can I what this painting?
Just duplicate
Oh,
like
duplicate it. Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
Okay.
Then go to image, replace color.
Ooh,
Have you done this?
no. Show me. I'm learning something. Where's replace color?
Adjustments up, go down to replace color at the
Ooh,
bottom. And now eyedropper the gray part of the rock.
like this?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then go to like the saturation one and like crank that up. Let's see.
Oh,
Um,
wow. I need to try this more often. So it basically just saturates all the grays?
Yeah, you can if you go to fuzziness, at the yeah, the top slider, it'll widen the selection or
Oh.
so you can this will kind of prove the point what we're talking about, like all those grays. What if we saturate them all? Like, how does that change the
Ah.
painting, you know?
Yes. This is super cool. Okay, so should I click OK?
Yeah, you mess with the hue too. Let's
Oh,
see
mess with
it.
the hue. Okay. Whoa. Oh my God. What should I do it to? Blue? Yeah. Let's do green. Or you choose.
yeah, we could do red. Uh,
Red? Oh gosh, red is so siren-y. Okay, so this right here,
well, like more orange maybe.
more orange. Okay, like this.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
What
Just
happens if I play with lightness? That affects the value, right?
yeah, that's just value.
Okay, so I'll just keep that at 0. What else
Yeah.
should I do?
You could leave it at that, I guess.
Okay, this is
Um,
interesting.
yeah, now click that layer on and off.
Yeah,
So you can just see like how being specific about like where you're putting the saturated colors, um uh, like how much more like natural and kind of like soothing
right.
and when you bump up all the saturation that completely changes the mood. Now it's like
Yes.
something evil is coming, like I don't know.
I love that you said mood because I feel like value and temperature is so much tied to mood. Like when I do color keys for work, I'm focusing largely on value and temperature over, I would say, most anything else. Like obviously lighting and stuff like, well, lighting is value, but you're right. Like this, it just completely changes the mood. And I'm also curious if it changes the value actually. So interestingly, the value doesn't change. Is that because I didn't affect the lightness?
Yeah, because yeah, exactly. The
Okay,
lightness level, like you could adjust that if you want. I think it does a pretty good job when you adjust the color. It won't mess with the
that's
values
cool.
too much.
Okay. So it
Yeah.
keeps the value while changing the saturation.
Yeah, I think so. I haven't paid too close attention to it, but I use this
Okay.
technique all the time when I want to like, because I know you don't paint in many layers, do you? Or do
For
you?
work I do, but for my own work, no, I always end up merging a lot of things, but I will duplicate it and then add layers and then merge everything and then duplicate it. That's kind of how I
Okay.
work. Yeah.
Well, you can use this if you like paint like a field of like yellow flowers and
And
everything is
then,
one layer. You could just select the yellow and then change it to orange or something if you want.
okay, I'm gonna try that. This is a really cool trick. Thanks for sharing that. I think I
Yeah.
remember seeing your demo and I did this and I forgot about it.
Oh, okay.
I always learn. I'm such an old school painter. I'm always learning all these new tricks. But was that image? Oh, see, I already forgot. Oh,
Um,
so I turn it on and off. Image adjustment and
yep,
replace
replace
color.
color. Yep.
I've also done something with match color, right?
Yeah, I use that all the time. Maybe we'll save that for next time.
Yeah, that would be cool. That would be cool. Yeah, I remember seeing that you would like if you took a reference photo, you can kind of match the colors a certain way. Okay,
Hmm.
that's
Yeah.
cool. But yeah, I think that's a really cool way to compare because everything needs comparison, right? Like sometimes we don't know if it's too saturated or not saturated enough until we compare with something else and we're like, oh, that needs something or oh, that doesn't need that, kind of thing. So
Hmm.
let's turn this bright red off. It's too bright.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think is there anything else that you wanted to hit on? I don't know how long we've been doing this for. But we talked about composition, value structure, color, textures are beautiful as well. I think just a little thing about texture, even though this is a traditional painting, just the thin, little bit, little thicker in some places. I think that also lends to a really beautiful quality.
Yeah, there's areas of rest in the rock, and then you get areas of lots of
Yes.
texture, like in the grass.
Yes.
Because you
And
need
that's a really good
areas to
point.
rest versus areas of complexity.
For sure. For sure. You know what I like to say to my students?
Hmm.
I like to say, I don't know what you think about this analogy. Oh, that's so cool. We can like talk about, and you can tell me if this works or not. I like to say, imagine there's a tug of war, you know, a rope, and then on one end is simplicity. 'Cause I say the same thing, and I know David Divol said this too. On the other end, it's complexity, and so they're kind of like sometimes a painting needs more simplicity, and sometimes it needs more complexity. And you're kind of going back and forth till you find like a nice taut sweet spot, I guess. But it's almost like sometimes you gotta, you know which end you gotta pull. That's kind of how I think about it in my mind. And I think that's such an important point because if it was all busy, you know, your eye wouldn't know where to look, but there's so much beautiful texture here, and this is so simple, you know, in terms of this mass right here, you know, it's a simple oblong mass with just a few extractions of these trees brought forward, but just enough for us to be like, "Yep, that's trees," and leave the rest for the viewer to, you know, figure out or, you know, it does nothing not everything needs to be spelled out, I think, and I think that is really cool.
Yeah, I like
Um,
your tug of war analogy.
does that
Um,
work?
yeah, I always think of I worked with this one person who he would spend forever on a painting and he detail every single part of the painting. Like the background clouds would be like hyper detailed.
Hyper rendered, yeah.
It'd be as detailed as the foreground. Um, I'm like, dude, just paint a cloud and then move on. Like
Right?
it drove me crazy.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I mean,
I couldn't do that.
there's a time and place for that sometimes in production, but in a
Right,
painting like this, you want to have areas of rest, areas of detail to draw the eye around and have a specific place we're looking at. You don't want to be distracted by some detail in the distant mountain.
right. Totally agree, totally agree. Hierarchy to me, I think, is really important, like having a sense of where do you wanna it's like eating a course, you know, it's like this first course, second you know, it's like, you don't want to be like, "Yeah," you know, like, all at once, it's like, "Hey, let's lay it out one by one and take the person through a journey," right? I think that's part of the design that goes into creating a well-crafted painting. I think I'm hungry. I'm not hungry. I don't know why
Yeah,
I
we
keep
need
going back to
to
food.
come up with a title for this related to food somehow.
Ooh, that would be
I'll
good. That would definitely
brainstorm.
be yes, that would be like something, clickbaity.
Yeah.
Let's brainstorm something good. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'll make them click on it. Um, I guess one last question that just popped in my mind. If you were to take one, maybe this is a bad question, I don't know, but if you were to take one thing from this painting and apply it to your own, like what would you take from this?
I think I want to take this overall value structure and
Mm,
try it in a painting, like the dark background
yeah,
and the light foreground.
yeah,
'Cause like I live in the mountains right now and there's like storms that happen all the time and
right.
I get this kind of lighting when like there's a storm in the distance, but where I am it's still light.
Uh-huh.
And it's just like this painting, so it'd be really cool to try that.
Yeah, that would be I
Mm.
would love to see you do that. I think I would be the same. I would be really inspired by the value structure as well. And definitely definitely try to pull that. There's just another one here. Oh, I can't. Damn. I
Is this
can't.
by the same artist?
Yeah, yeah, it's by the same artist and just speaking of bold value structures, maybe this is off topic, but this is another one that I was like, wow, I would never think of doing that, but it's so bold and so black.
Yeah.
I think it's really, really cool as well. But definitely, I think that this is one of the paintings he was most known for, apparently, I think
Mhm.
according to Wikipedia. But yeah, definitely I would for this one, I would be inspired by the value structure as well, just that reverse light to dark.
Mhm.
Maybe we could do that. Let's try that. We can both do a painting
Oh, so we have homework
and then
too.
it'd be good. Yeah. And then it'd be a good promo. Be like, "Hey, look at what we did. Check out this video where we talked about this." We're just
Okay.
kidding, we don't have to.
All right, I
Um,
will.
yeah. You'll probably have to push me to do it. But that would be cool.
Hmm.
But anywho, that was really fun, Zach.
Yeah.
Really, really happy that we got to do this. The next one, it will be another artist that you can choose, and I think, yeah, we'll see how this goes, but that was really fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you for inviting me and your great idea.
For sure. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed that. I'm like looking somewhere off now, but I hope you guys enjoyed that. And now I'm looking at I never know where to look for this stuff. Like, do I look up there or I don't know.
Yeah, it's so
Um,
weird looking at the camera. It's
I
like,
know it is weird because I want to look at myself, but then I'm like, no, I have to look at the camera. Yeah, stay tuned for another video coming up soon. I hope you guys enjoyed this fun, casual analysis of Arkhip Kuindzhi, Ukrainian artist. And yeah, go and look up his work and study his work because he's awesome.